Hi everyone. We're waiting on Rick, one of the other panelists, but we're going to get started so you guys can go about your days. I'm Anna Swartz. I'm the administrative assistant and alumni liaison at the School of Management. Today we have a panel to help you with career and college advice. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand or write it in the chat. Any students here for CDR points, Zoom will record it, and then I will pass your names along to the career manager. So Elayna, we'll start with you. If you could just introduce yourself, your name, your major, your degree, year of graduation, your current job, title, and field.
Sure. I'm Elayna Moore. I was a graduate of the School of Management back in 2023. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Business Admin, and I majored in both marketing and organizational behavior and human resources management. So I was a double major. I am currently an HR analyst focusing in compensation and benefits for my company at Johnson Electric. That is, I think that's all of my that's my couple little spiel. So
Yeah, that's a long intro. I ask
is
you a
it?
lot in a little bit. Dylan?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dylan Straka. I went to UM-Flint for my bachelor's and my master's. I got my BBA in accounting in 2017. I got my general MBA in 2019, and then tacked on finance accounting concentrations, which I wrapped up in 2021. I am currently, and happy about it, the CFO of Wild Bill's Tobacco.
Thanks, Dylan. Your camera's lagging a little bit. I don't know if it's just me or not, but I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. I'm sorry about that,
oh,
guys.
that's okay. Elayna, how did you navigate the transition from college to your first job? Were there any unexpected challenges?
So I actually am very lucky to say that my internship that I got while at the University of Michigan-Flint actually correlated into now my current position. So I stayed with the company that I got an internship with while in college, and I was able to transition from an HR information systems intern into my current role as an analyst with the compensation benefits department. So it was a very easy transition. I will say, working remote and having the whole COVID thing happen right when I was in college was already probably the biggest transition. But working remotely full time was a really easy transition for me. Because that was basically what we were doing in college. But it has been obviously a lot more, a lot bigger of a job, and learning new things that you don't necessarily get a lot of class time is probably the biggest curve that I had. But it's one of those things that you're just going to have to get some work experience, or at least rely on your network and stuff like that to ask, because specific departments, it's best to have specific knowledge or at least some hands-on experience with that.
Great, thanks, Dylan.
And the question was transition from college to the workforce, right?
Yep, I can repeat it. How did you
Yeah.
navigate the transition from college to your first job? Were there any unexpected challenges?
I was a little bit fortunate that I started working in my first kind of accounting finance full-time role when I was a freshman in college. So I kind of did both at the same time along the way. And you really kind of ripped the Band-Aid right from that. Hey, you could be late for class, but you might not necessarily be able to be late for work because that's going to reflect on your performance evaluation. I think one of the biggest differences is, when you're in a classroom, at least one at a time, you just have to give your attention and your focus and make sure you're good with the professor. But in the business world, a lot of the departments interact with one another, and different people need different things from you at different times. So I think that was probably one of the biggest wakes up, and managing that, and getting to this person, the report that they need in a specific time.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, what advice would you give a student interested in your specific career?
I would say the biggest thing that's helped me, and something that I definitely learned from starting college and what's really helped me into my career is really relying on your network and really trying to build that up and make connections while in college. Because I know a lot of people say networking and as a broader term, but it really is something that has carried me and helped me. Professor Bloom, I'm sure he's still at the university. He was the person that had the connection for a alumni who was my boss. And so that was how I got my internship. And knowing people and being really well known with faculty and really putting myself in a lot of extracurriculars, and also reaching out to alumni that even if you hadn't met them while you were in college, just going out and saying, hey, I'd love to join. There's a lot of local HR networks, a lot of business professional networks in your area, in the greater state of Michigan, that have really helped me and given me a lot of advice that has really helped me a lot. So really just make sure that you are networking and you are making connections with alumni and other people in your field, because that really will help you. It is kind of sometimes a who knows who in the HR world and in the business world, greater business world as well. So make sure that you are always making connections, always putting yourself in, if you can, in extracurriculars that will help get you more people in your base when you go off into the workforce.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
I could not agree more with Elayna. Your network is one of the biggest resources you have. And so many people just don't take advantage of many opportunities. You know, a lot of people categorize U of M-Flint as a commuter school, but you can still make the most of it. Get to know your classmates, get to know your professors, go to their office hours, join organizations on campus. And I loved Elayna's comment on reaching out to alumni on LinkedIn, or, you know, ask your friends and family if you're a young student and don't have, you know, hey, I'm thinking of this career. Do you guys know anybody in it that I could job shadow or something like that? My biggest piece of advice, kind of building on that, try to get an entry level job in the field while you're in college. You know, if you think you're going to go into banking, go to be a bank teller. You know, get that initial experience, do trial and error, see if you actually like it. And if you can't get it, get an internship or a job shadow. The faster you can gain experience of any kind, it's just going to accelerate your career.
Thanks, Dylan. So you kind of touched base on that a little bit, but let's go with the next question. So, Elayna, what piece of advice would you give to someone who's uncertain about their career path or feels overwhelmed by the pressure to choose?
I would say, kind of like what Dylan said, dip your toes into the water. If you think there's something that you want to do, or if you had an interest, you say, oh, maybe I would like that. Start with a job shadow, start with interviewing people that are in a network or someone that you might know, of just what their job entails. And if a day job shadow is probably the best, just small little bit experience. And if you say, I really want to do this, I kind of want to do, I would start as an internship, or at least a entry level job in something like that. It is really, for me specifically, I was in the HR information systems internship, and I learned a lot, and it was really helpful for my knowledge base. But I knew that I did not want to do that for the rest of my career. And it was very helpful because it gave me a lot of, like I said, job experience and work experience, but it helped me grow into a different position within my company. And if I leave my company, it'll also give me a lot of knowledge to put in my resume. But it did help me figure out what I did and didn't want to do. And make sure that you are always asking questions, always trying to find the real life experience behind the things that you want to do. And I know it can get very overwhelming, but it's just one step at a time. And everybody is at different phases in their job area. So make sure that you're talking to people and be okay if something doesn't work out. Don't think that it's a failure. Just say that that's an experience. And then now you have more knowledge to go into a different direction.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
So my freshman year was very exploratory, and I'm probably changed my major 5 times that year. I was going to be a dentist, and I was going to be an architect. I was going to be a psychologist, and I narrowed these things out by taking classes in it. You know, I did a full class for a whole semester, and it's okay to trial and error, and it's much cheaper to invest in one class and realize you don't want to do something versus committing something and paying 4 years and being miserable the rest of your life. So, you guys are in college. This is the chance to explore. Sign up for different classes that are out of your current major if you think you'd be interested in something, and see how it goes.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, what skills or knowledge did you learn throughout the program that you found most useful in your career?
I would say that the HR specific, and this is for, I guess, HR majors because it's an upper level HR class. But the negotiations portion of my last year, it was a negotiations class. It was very, very helpful. And I would say that's something that you don't really think a lot about, of negotiating salaries, negotiating, and being on the other side of it, being in HR, negotiating on behalf of a company, and what they want. I think that that was something that I didn't even think that I would want to do, or would have to do, I guess. And it is something that everyone has to do, even if no matter what job you have, if you're going into being a salaried position, you would really want to have negotiating skills. And that really helped me. And it was probably also because it was in my last year, it was the most fresh in my mind. But that specifically, and then all of the technical, it sounds mundane, but like Word and PowerPoint and even Microsoft Access, those classes actually really helped give a foundation to a lot of the stuff that I am doing now in my job as an analyst, which again, it's an HR degree. So you don't know if you're necessarily going to be working in spreadsheets all the time, but really paying attention in those classes, and also trying to get advanced courses after the fact, because there's a lot of Excel, PowerPoint, Word, classes you can do and workshops you can do. I would say really take advantage of those if you think that if that's going to be a part of your job. It is probably for every job, but specifically if you're going for something a little bit more technical, I would absolutely take advantage of those.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
So I have a two-part answer, one part from undergrad and one part from master's. And I think I touched on this being a challenge, working on teams. In School of Management, was once you got into those business classes, there was a team project you had to do in every single class. And that really helped get my comfort level in working with people that were in different majors and things like that, and had different viewpoints all coming together and finalizing and finishing a project. One other thing from the undergrad was the extracurricular side of it. At one point I was and UM-Flint has extracurriculars for just about everything, that if you just ask someone in administration, they should be able to tell you. At one point I was going to be a CPA, and I took part and found out about VITA, which was basically, for people that were below the poverty line, or students even. We did their taxes for free. So it was a great way for me I learned a lot, realized that I wasn't going to be a CPA, but aside from my time, there was no financial investment from that. On the master side of it, really networking. It was a huge thing. I mean, we had people that actually took the time to get to know their classmates. We had classmates get jobs from one another and help actually negotiate and get better salaries and things like that. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, what's the most important soft skill that you feel helped you advance your career, and how can current students develop it? You kind of mentioned networking, sort of. So yeah, what sort of soft skills are important for current students to learn and practice?
I think networking, obviously, and also just kind of what Dylan said, teamwork building. I think that is a working and figuring out how to work with different kinds of people and in different ways. And that is it's a soft skill, but it is very, very important. And you don't have to be the most outgoing person. You don't have to make friends with every single person that you're in a group with, but it is very important to know the strength, to understand and figure out people's strengths and weaknesses, and also just be able to build a successful group out of that, because there is group work, I would say, in every job. And it is very easy to not understand, or to think someone is some way, and then they are that it comes out to be something else. So I think that making sure that you are able to communicate and you're able to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and then build groups based on that, and also cater to everyone's strengths, is a big part of working with people in general, and is a soft skill that not a lot of people have, but it's really, you should really focus on it now when there's so much group work, and so many opportunities to understand.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
Two that come to mind, one would be leadership. And you might not necessarily experience this at the beginning of your career, but as you guys advance, you certainly will. It's a very different environment when you're just responsible for your work, or where you have to basically make sure all the work underneath you is done and it's accurate. And so my advice on we talked about group projects, and take the lead on that. Know that if it has to get over the finish line, it has to get submitted. It's just a very different mindset. Instead of just having to worry about just your work, you have to care about the whole teams. The other piece of that is kind of in the problem solving, strategic planning way of it. And again, this might not be in the entry level, but as you guys advance into careers, that it's not just about what you need to do right this second. It's what can you do now that will work 5 years from now, or what can you do? Maybe it's going to take a little while. It might take 3 months, or 4 years to finish your degree. But what is the long-term impact and benefit of the daily work you're doing now for the future?
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, has technology changed your job? What changes do you see in the future?
I would say for technology that definitely, I would say that at least the applications that I use have definitely even changed in the last year and a half that I've started working, and transitioning from Google systems that the university uses to Microsoft was a big transition. But I would say that it is very, to know both is very good now. So to learn both Microsoft suites and the Google suite, which I think is still what the university uses, because a lot of older companies will have Microsoft, and a lot of it seems like younger companies will maybe transition to Google or Slack or some other Teams messaging applications, and I think that they are always evolving. I use a lot of Excel, and that's kind of a dinosaur sometimes, but it is very useful to have both knowledge bases, and to get well versed in both. I don't I'm fully remote, so the technology that we use is mostly just on the computer and stuff, and phone, and that way. But yeah, just making sure that you're both well versed in both of those applications getting into it will be very helpful.
Have you guys approached like AI or ChatGPT? That's what we're doing right now.
Yes, that is not something that my company, so my company is foreign based in China. So my company is headquartered in China. So we do not use a lot of the AI stuff, particularly just because it's a very big unknown right now. But we are an older company. So that's probably a lot of newer companies are probably utilizing that a lot more than we are. But we have, I think for some recruiting things we have, but mostly it is we're just going to wait and see what develops out of that. And once it gets a little bit more sophisticated, I think my company will be open to using more AI tools and stuff like that.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
100%. So part of why I was brought on to bring more technological advancement to the corporate office. On the accounting side, we were they had not modernized. I mean, it was paper ledgers and handwriting checks and things like that. So we're going through and implementing new software right now. And some of that's just as simple. If you look back at finance and accounting over the last several years, tax returns used to be done by hand. Now you can go to Walmart and buy TurboTax and have your taxes done within minutes. Similar thing, you used to handwrite a ledger, and then hand check your math and cut a paper check. Now you can just set stuff on automatic ACH to pay. And we're even looking at bots and things that could pay bills on our behalf. And then we are starting to look at AI. And, even from my perspective, if I have to do an investor update or something like that, I hit up ChatGPT first to get, at least a draft version. Why recreate the wheel, And I think I think you touched on this, Anna, how do we see it changing in the future? I definitely seeing it continue to change. And, in the finance industry, there's a lot of worry and concern and, eliminating positions and things like that. And, I think certain positions will go away, but you're just going to need more people. You're going to get, the workforce is going to get more intelligent over time, as it has over the last several years. You're going to have access to information faster, and it's going to be more accurate information. You're just going to have more people to analyze and interpret in my field. So, yeah.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, what resources did you use on campus? Or were you part of any student orgs, or did you use professors for reference letters, things of that nature?
Yes, I did use professors a lot, and they were very helpful. And that is a very, I think we've touched on the networking part of it, networking with your professors and getting to know them. And yes, I was the president and vice president, I think, of the Society for Human Resources Management when I was in college. So that was very helpful. That got me to go to a lot of HR related conventions and HR related workshops. And that was incredibly helpful as well. It was also really good team building with other HR majors, getting a little bit out of class time and working within and learning leadership as well, learning how to manage a group. That was very, very important. I was involved because theater is a passion of mine. So I was involved in the theater program a little bit in college. And my mother is the controller for the University of Michigan-Flint. So I grew up on campus. So I went to all of the things and went to a lot of performances and a lot of talks and lectures and things like that. And networking with my professors very much. They did help me get some references, and Professor Bloom helping me get my internship, which later get into my job, which was very helpful. I would suggest that everyone get involved as much as you can. I know it's hard sometimes with balancing work and school, but if you can join the advice given to me was join one professional organization that relates to your major and join one thing for fun. And really expanding your group even outside of School of Management, because there's a lot of people coming for a lot of different majors and a lot of different ideas, and really expanding your network even to those, if you even think that they're not going to be a network down the line, they probably will be, or they'll at least be there to support if you make a career change, or if they make a career change, or maybe everyone has HR and accounting in their companies, even if that isn't what their main focus is. So always making sure that you are putting yourself out there in college and taking advantage of it the most that you can.
Yeah, and anyone that's wanting to get a reference from a faculty member, just make sure you get to know them and they get to know you, because a lot of times they're approached and asked and they don't know who you are and they can't write a really good reference letter. Okay, Dylan?
Yes, and agree with Elayna. I was in a couple specifically to SOM and a couple outside of it. I was in VITA, the Volunteer Tax Association I talked about, and Beta Alpha Psi, which was the honors accounting fraternity. My favorite from SOM was the Entrepreneur Society with Dr. Witt. I encourage you all to check that out. I actually, because of my membership, the Entrepreneur Society, got my job I was at for 7 years with a family office I worked at. That's very near and dear to my heart. But I was also kind of on the more campus-wide side of it. I was in student government. I was the director of financial affairs for that. So, you work with every school amongst U of M-Flint. And then I was in a fraternity as well. I was a Theta Chi member. And yes, you talked about professors. So on a side note, I had lost my job and started a side business in 2023 and reached out to some contacts from U of M-Flint, and an employee, Melissa Farrow, who works at U of M-Flint, connected me, and I have a client I work with still to this day because of her. So absolutely make those relationships, maintain those relationships. Dr. Witt was a professor I got very close with. He was my first professor in the School of Management. I have never seen a professor like him, or Yenner, or his name's escaping me, but there's so many there that, if you put an effort in the classroom and to build a relationship with them, they will fight for you. They will lead introductions for you. But if they don't know you, it's hard for them to be a resource.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, do you have any professional failures you would like to share and how you overcame the issue at hand?
Yes. I think not sure. I guess one thing that I can say from moving on from my internship to my full-time position, it was kind of a negotiation tactic, because there's a lot of companies that will very much enjoy and have your skill set for their internship, but making kind of networking and marketing yourself for a full-time position, especially if it's not something that's just a direct promotion. Um, I think that I was looking for other jobs, and I was kind of in that frustration era when I had just recently graduated, thought that they would give me a position, and I just didn't hear anything, or it was oh, maybe. And I got really frustrated, and I was looking for, I kind of did the passive aggressive approach of being open to work on LinkedIn. And I think that that was what snaked into my current, or talking the negotiation tactics. But I think being more upfront with your people, especially if you can talk to your upper management and talk to your supervisors, I think it would probably have been a more direct approach, and it probably would have gotten me, at least in the beginning, of having more of those conversations, and not letting the initial conversation be the only one that you take for face value. I think that really sitting down with, if you have a good boss, which I know it's sometimes not, but I have the luxury of having a really good boss at the time that really championed for me to our headquarters in Hong Kong of, no, she needs to stay. She's a really good employee, and really went to bat for me. But I could have done that for myself. And I think that that was something that I learned that was kind of a failure on my end. It ended up working out well, but I think really put in those important moments, going down with your boss, going down with sitting down with them and saying, I know this is the skill set that I bring. I'd really love to work here. I'd really love to continue in this position. Obviously, I would need to be compensated more, or need to be in a full-time position to really get the total use out of my time and energy. But really marketing yourself to your company if you're looking for a promotion in any shape or form throughout your career. I think that being sometimes bold, sometimes saying, this is what I bring to the table, and having that conversation really sets a tone for how you're going to be treated in your workforce, and really taking all critiques, all experience, and making sure that you are putting yourself out there in the ways that matter, in the times that you would feel that you need to be given more.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit, but due to downsizing, I lost my job in the summer of 2023. And I don't know if, I'm sure maybe many of you grew up this way. My parents came from the generation, they worked the same place their entire professional career. People didn't really lose their jobs. If it was, you did something bad, or something, something really serious must have happened. And so that was I grew up in this mentality that, oh, your job, that's one of the worst things. And So my initial reaction was, the rug was pulled out from me. My whole life is going to crumble or something like that. But it's really just not the day and age. I mean, people change jobs all the time. And that's kind of touching back on the networking piece. I quickly reacted, started reaching out to my network, and had a job relatively quickly. So, you're going to have setbacks, sometimes major, sometimes minor, in your working career. And, it's okay to take a second, pause, take a breath, but just quickly just jump back into it and just keep moving forward.
Thanks, Dylan. So I'm not sure if either one of you are in the hiring position, but if we'll start with you, Elayna. If you can share some resume do's and don'ts and some interviewing do's and don'ts with the students.
Yes, my job isn't fully employee facing, but I do have a lot of resume do's and don'ts. And that was something that we actually did, the Society for Human Resources Management. And I'm sure, I think Abby's on the call. I think she still does that. So that's really useful to use them for that specific time in school. But in general, I would say a lot of things that I see are resumes that are over a page front and back. That's always something that I have seen a lot of, and people don't already know that you really should be condensing those to smaller things. I guess in general, making sure that everything is current to how you want, what job you are applying for, making sure that you aren't just sending your blank resume template. It's good to have for all of the things that you've done and copying and pasting the ones that you think are relevant to the job that you're applying for, but make sure, especially in your cover letter, but in general, that you are putting the skills that you have created and have in previous jobs, and making that specific for the job that you're applying for. A lot of things nowadays, especially when we talked about technology, there are a lot of companies that use a generator for all the resumes they get, because they might get hundreds. So sometimes it's as simple as making sure that you have all of your punctuation, making sure that everything is spelled correctly, making sure that you have all of the things that the important stuff is first. You don't want the actual job because it happens to be the most relevant. Like if you took a year off or you were doing an internship, but it wasn't really pertaining to what you're trying to get now, and putting that third or fourth as making sure that you are putting the most relevant experience first, even if it isn't the most recent. I guess that's another thing that a lot of people do. I think that hiring, making sure that you are, obviously, if you're doing it in person, making sure you're on time, making sure that you are, it sounds mundane, but making sure that you are presentable, making sure that you are prepared. A good thing I have done in the past is use ChatGPT for practice questions. It might just be simple interview questions, but it might be something specific, and that will always help you and be able to formulate responses, because it is all very off the cuff. It is very, you don't really get to plan for interviews, and know what you're bringing and know your skill set, and look up the company before you apply to them, or especially before you do an interview. Know their values, know what they stand for, and make sure that you are presenting the best, obviously best version of yourself, the most and do the work and the homework before an interview. Don't just go into it and have nothing to and just be all scatterbrained and stuff like that. Make sure you really are putting the time and the effort to really do your homework on the company, on what you bring, and how you would use your skill set into the job that you're interviewing for.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
So you guys are going to spend more time at work and with your coworkers than anywhere else throughout your life. So you better like it and you better enjoy it. It makes your life so much happier and easier if you do. So an interview is a two-way street. They're not only just finding out if it's a good fit for them. You need to find out if it's a good fit for you. So just be yourself, just be honest. If it's not a good fit, there's lots of other jobs out there, and you'll find one that is. And they're going to ask you questions, but you need to ask them questions to make sure that as well. That's going to show your general interest, that you did your homework, that you're taking it seriously. And there's going to be times, especially if you are looking, where you might get multiple offers at a time. And the more information you have about that company, the more comfortable you're going to feel in making a decision. And with that, and I always did it and people always commented on it, and I thought it was more a common thing. It's totally, I walk in and I have a little folio and I have all kinds of notes. And then even during the interview process, so I don't forget, I would take notes, and that's totally okay to do. If someone's asking you a question and you want to bring up something later, just jot a little note. There's nothing wrong with that. And I always had off to the side, an interviewer, they want specific examples. What's a project you're proud of that you've completed, or something in that side. Going into it, I always have a list of 10 questions that are written out, and maybe some of them are answered on their own and you only need 3. And I try to have 5 to 10 examples of specific projects that I've been proud of, so that hopefully, depending on the particular question that comes up, you can draw on those.
Thanks, Dylan. So, Elayna, I know your situation was unique, but could you give the students an idea of what the interviewing process is from start to finish, like 2 phone interviews? Is there more than one person in there?
Absolutely. Yes, my situation was a little bit unique, but it was still a regular interview process, I would say, as for any job, especially in the professional world. And I did a lot of interviewing before I got my internship. There's normally at least more than one person interviewing you at a time. Normally, if it's not within an HR perspective, it's an HR person and somebody that's going to either be your direct supervisor or a coworker or somebody that is within your specific department. I've seen panel interviews. I've seen 2. I've seen as much as, I think I had 7 or 8 people interviewing me at one point. So it can get a little bit daunting, but that part is really important. And that's normally I would say, second or third interview. I've had a couple phone interviews. I even had people have been utilizing, which I don't know if it's as much anymore because of COVID and getting a little bit out of since COVID. But I had to record a video of myself responding to some of these questions. I didn't even talk to some people for the very first part of my interview process with my current company. So they would have a question, and then I would just have to basically take a video of myself responding to that question. And it was about 3 or 4. And I've had other things that have happened, other companies that I've interviewed with that have had similar things like that, which is new and daunting and not something I was ever prepared for. But that was normally the first one, and then a second interview with a phone interview. And then I would normally do an in-person interview, and then sometimes another interview after that, but it can be up to 3 or 4 in my experience. And obviously more is if you're getting a higher and higher positions, it'll probably be more than that. But that was my experience. And of course, I interviewed while at my company because a fellow student of mine had interviewed and got a position with the CIA. So I was also within that process. So that is a whole separate process. That was multiple phone interviews. That was multiple panel interviews. Obviously did not end up continuing on with that specific job just because I got the current position I'm in. But that was government is a completely different than in just regular companies as well.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
I've had a vast mix. It's so funny. So, like the Wild Bills one, it was through a recruiter. So worked more behind the scenes with her and a lot of build up and conversations beforehand. But really, when it came to meeting, I had 2 interviews at corporate. And even though they were 2 interviews, the process was probably about 3 months long. It was, they met with a lot of people. They wanted to make sure the person was a right fit. And that's one thing I will touch on, and you guys will find this throughout your careers, if you just go the direct route and a company posts it, there could be more interviews for that process. Maybe it's 3 or 4, maybe if it's an entry level, it's 1 or 2. As you get farther on your career, it might be 3 or 4. Where if you get to the point where you're dealing with a recruiter, you might have a conversation and then an interview with a recruiter. And then maybe because they've done their due diligence and weeded people out, you might only meet once or maybe twice with the company you're going to work with. As you advance on, I've had times where I've had to do a technical assignment, hey, this is the problem, build us a solution in Excel or something like that. But I've primarily worked for family-owned businesses. So a lot of the time it's been a more, the culture fit and the relationship building was much more important because they're a general sense that the skills can be there or they're willing to invest in you and get the skills maybe you're lacking in. But the larger companies, it can be very extensive. When I was a sophomore and interned with Plant Moran, there was an on-campus interview, and then there was a 6-hour interview for an internship in one day. You were there, I think we were there from like 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I think you had, it was like 8 half-hour breakout sessions or something like that. And then even though you went to lunch, the lunch was still kind of an interview to see how you engaged and interacted with the team. And you guys, there's not one, every company does it different. So I would just kind of roll with the punches, and any interview you go through, and I'd say that's a big takeaway too. So many people, you might interview and, oh, if I don't get it, it's a failure. You learn something from every interview, and you learn about a new company, and just think of it as kind of mastering your craft. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get at it, and the better you become.
Thanks, Dylan. So when I ask this question, people usually say they don't have a typical day, but Elayna, can you describe your typical day at work?
Sure. I'm very unique. I am pretty much fully remote. So that has been a very, I would say, a very big advantage for me is keeping the getting to do it in my living room. So that is very. It varies with that meaning that then that's also kind of a typical day for me is a little bit different than I'm sure the regular, and Din will probably have a very different day than I do. But I normally am woken up. I normally can do my routine before school or school. Goodness gracious, before work and breakfast, that kind of stuff. Getting together, coming in, and doing work, and I have 9 to 5 hours or 8 to 5 hours. And so I will respond to emails. I do a lot of reporting for my job. I talk right now. We are doing audits for my company. So we are doing a specific audit as it relates to our benefits packages. So I'm conducting a lot of help sessions for all of our employees through Zoom and through our Teams messaging. And it's a lot of talking to employees, talking to my supervisors and to our HR corporate as well when doing this audit. And then I'll take a break. I will go and walk normally. I'll go and walk around my apartment complex just to kind of get some movement in, because it can be very boring and sometimes a little bit hard on mentally to stay in one place for too long. And then I'll come back. I will make sure that everything's up to date, continue on until about 5 p.m. And that's normally when I go either on a second walk or I'll go and completely turn off my station and go and do something else. It would be the most helpful if this, when when your station is either separate or in a different room than where you live, because that can also, the balance of it can also be a little bit strenuous sometimes. But I do a lot of at-home work, and then I do visit my plants. We have a plant in Plymouth, we have a plant in Ohio, and in Tennessee. So that is a very different day for me, but this is mostly my 9 to 5.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
So like I have a job where the more I sit and don't move, the more productive I am. So exercise is really important. And I live about 45 minutes away from the office, and I'm in office every day. So depending on what time my meetings start, what time my day starts, the alarm goes off at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning, and I drive down and I get a workout in down here. And then I have at least 3 meetings a day. Sometimes they're quick touch bases, 15 minutes. Sometimes, I had meetings yesterday from 8:30 a.m. or to 1:30 p.m. in the day. They can go for hours long. But as you guys start entering your schedules and stuff, try to pick one day a week that you don't really schedule or set meetings. And I try to pick Fridays for that. Fridays is my catch up day where maybe I can knock a project out over the finish line, or catch up on emails, or clean my monstrosity of a desk. So yeah, definitely meetings throughout the day. And then, the accounting team that I work with, their job is very cyclical. By this date, they have to have this paid. By this date, they have to have month closed. Where my piece, it's more major projects. And so we just wrapped up a major project this week that I started in June of last year. So really trying to pick one or two daily, kind of a priority list, like, hey, I need to get, move the needle on these 2 projects, this much today, or get to this point, and try to get through those first. And then I'm sure Elayna has this too. You always have hey, this person needs this quick report from you, or hey, I have this question for you, or need this small number, and answering that stuff. But yeah, just trying to move the needle on a couple of projects, and then meetings.
Thanks, Dylan. Elayna, what do you like best about your job? What is the most satisfying part of your job?
So the reason I even got into HR, because I was actually a social work major when I started college, and then very quickly moved to pre-business at that point, and then HR, working with employees and really helping them. And that's what I think I've found, even being in the current job I'm in with my benefits packages, and managing benefits and managing compensation, is I really love helping employees. I love being there for them. I really love talking to them and helping making their lives easier, and making it not always trying to make it not the employees and then HR separately, because a lot of times that's in a lot of cultures, especially in plants, and in factory work. I don't have and I am unique to where my company does not have a union. So that is also a different part of it that would be a little bit more challenging with unions. But I still want to always make sure that I'm putting employees first and talking to employees. I am an extrovert by just my personality. So always, even being remote, my favorite part is having employees understand their benefits, having them understand their compensation, and hopefully feeling like they are accurately compensated for what the job that they're doing, and making sure they understand when they go to the doctor how much it's going to be, how much, like what you're entitled to, and making sure everything's up front, so that that's a peace of mind that a lot of employees sometimes don't have. They don't really understand their benefits. They don't really understand why this is coming out of their paycheck, most importantly, why they're not getting why they're getting a deduction in their paperwork and in their job. So making sure that they understand, and that we're always here for them, and that we're always here to answer questions regarding their bills, and regarding their time off and things like that. So my favorite part is truly just being there for the employees and helping to bridge that gap, and keeping us as a person to go to when they have issues, because I always want to be a person that knows enough to be able to help, or if I don't know enough, to be able to get an answer for them, and create that trust building, which is why I love human resources.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
Two things I love about it. It's very exciting here. We're rapidly growing. We're just at the cusp of some huge expansions. We have a lot of exciting projects going on. So when you're with a rapidly growing company and there's a lot of change, it's just very exciting. Things are really fast paced. There's a lot happening. The day flies by. Like it's our first year we're doing it. We rented out the Michigan International Speedway. We're going to have one of the largest cigar events in the nation. Like that's super cool. Like I'm so excited I get to be, a small part of that behind the scenes and get to go. And the other piece, this is probably the first role where, we have over 1,200 employees. So, I'm in part kind of, they want me to engage with as many of those employees as they can. So part of it is, we have 1,000 employees that work in our stores, every single day. So making time to get to know some of them, stopping into stores. Our learning and development team asked me, and I was more than happy. I love it. They started D-money discussions, and this isn't, conversations with the CFO. This is conversations with Dylan, and it's not even really work finance topics. It's more personal finance. That's my specialty. That's not theirs, and it's a chance for them to ask questions like, hey, how much should I be putting into my 401k? Or, hey, I want to buy a house. What steps do I take, or want to set up an emergency fund? So I think that not only that the field team, but that our executive team wants that, and to have that relationship and that accessibility. I really like that part of the job.
Thanks, Dylan. So the next question will be just final advice because we're winding down here. So Elayna, do you have any final advice for the students on the call?
I think just parroting what I've said at the beginning is just make sure that you are taking advantage the most that you can, even outside of your classwork in the University of Michigan. Making sure you are talking to your faculty, going to their office hours, joining a club, making sure that you're really engaging with your people in your department, people outside of your department, really taking advantage of what U of M and UM-Flint and U of M in general has to offer, because there's so many opportunities to learn and grow, and the faculty, and I'm not just biased because I've worked there, and my mom is the controller, so she'd always help as well with any finance people or accounting people, but they will always help you. If you ask them, they will always go to the ends of the earth, no matter what, to give you the tools to be able to graduate and feel like you have all this knowledge. And taking advantage and doing the most while you're in college so that you can create the foundation for your work career is probably the best thing that I did in college, and the best thing that U of M Flint could have offered me.
Thanks, Elayna. Dylan?
Is say yes to as much as possible, and just try something. You don't necessarily have to stick with it, but go to an org meeting and check it out. Hop on one of these panel discussions like U of M Flint offers. Just the classmate you sit next to twice a week that you've never talked to. Just say hi and get to know them. This is the opportunity to build your network. Trial and error, figure out what you like, what you don't like. And I agree 100% with Elayna. So many people don't take the chance or risk the opportunity. And people genuinely want to help. So, add people on LinkedIn and just shoot them a note and just say, hey, I'm exploring your field, and, could we have a 15-minute discussion and I ask some questions or something like that. One piece of advice I will say, I've seen people, go too aggressive or too strong right out of the bat, and it's something you really take some time and build relationships. Don't email the provost and say, hey, I need a job, will you help me? But maybe stop and say hi to him at an event, and if he has office hours, maybe stop in and just say hi, and build a relationship and get to know someone gradually, and then feel free to make the ask, like, hey, and and another piece of advice I would say, it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct ask. And sometimes an indirect ask is better received and you get a better response. I've seen a lot of people, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you hire me? Or, is Wild Bill's hiring or something like that? Pose it more like, I'm looking for a new opportunity. Do you know anybody, any resources, could I pick your brain about it? Are there any resources that you could connect me with? If you make it a little more indirect, sometimes I find it goes over a little better. So, but you guys being on this are already doing your part. So kudos to you for that.
Thanks, Dylan. So we've reached the end of our career panel. Thank you, Elayna and Dylan, for your advice, and thank you to the students for sitting on the call and listening. I just wanted to say, if you ever want to reach out to us on LinkedIn, like Dylan said, feel free to add any of us as connections and keep in touch that way. But I hope everyone has a great day and stays warm with the snow coming, and that's it.